I wish I could just hit a reset button on this planet like you would for a video game. You know, if it's just not going well, you just start it over. You just start it over and go back through it, because I'm not feeling a lot of hope right now. I have seen, witnessed, and experienced, way too much in my life, but like a whole bunch in the past year and a whole bunch in just really the past week. And I know we have an election tomorrow, and I just feel like either way, I'm ready for us to get that over with. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off. But I don't think that the kind of change that we need is going to happen from a presidential election. And I'm not sure how we can actually get the kind of change that we need. We have college students that don't know how to use rulers or scissors. We have businesses that when you get harassed and injured on their property, they threaten to blacklist you if you want to take it any further. We have simple people that, doing their jobs that, are very immature and will ask you how everything is. And then when you let them know that something's wrong, they treat you like the bad guy. And then we have the freaking VA. I started dating a vet about a year ago. Just for those of you that don't know, Carl and I are in an open relationship. FYI, you missed one of the previous videos. Sorry. Anyways, I started dating a vet about a year ago, and it took me about a month to realize that he had PTSD. My first clue was I'm usually pretty good at noticing patterns, at least once I've been exposed to them long enough and putting them together. And I started to notice several patterns with him. And then there was one night where I was out, and usually what I do, because I'm a problem solver and it's part of my professional training, is I ask lots of questions. Ask lots of questions to try and gather more data to figure out what's wrong and what's going on. But he often gets overwhelmed with questions. And his brain, it's like, I imagine his brain is like one of those pieces of software on my computer. It's just spinning over and over again. It gets stuck in a loop, and so he'll repeat the same thing over and over again until he gets to a point where he's exhausted, and then he'll be confused and disoriented. He'll ask me, what's going on? He'll be upset. He'll be like, I don't know what's going on. Like, why are we fighting? Like, why is this or whatever? And I've figured out so far that usually it's just best if I just step away and let him isolate so that he can kind of reboot his processor. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. Anyways, first let me tell you, I'd only been dating for a month, and I was like, man, do I really want to date somebody with this kind of stuff? I had PTSD for a long time. Carl took care of me, so I guess it's only fair. But, this is pass it forward, pay it forward, that sort of thing. It's more than that. Like, I love Alex. Like, I'm very thankful that he's in my life. He's a wonderful, wonderful person, which is why it hurts me to see how fucked over by the VA he's been. So I met him about a year after he had lost a son and went through a bad divorce. He had a son, Blake, who was born 6 months premature, died after 27 days. Died during a hospital operation. There's questions about whether it should have even been taking place. Anyways, his son dies. And I don't know if the divorce had happened yet, but he goes into the VA for grief counseling in Tennessee. And instead of giving him the grief counseling that he needed, they hold him against his will, causing him further trauma and causing him to not want to go back to the VA to get help. So when I met him, he was just basically, living off of his savings. He had saved up enough money to not have to be able to work again if he didn't want to, and then the death of his son and his divorce happened and the VA happened, and he had to get a new place, and he ended up eating through like almost all of his savings, and, he can't work. He's partially disabled. Like, he could work if he was mentally, able to some capacity, but, not in the state he is. He should be on full disability is what he should be on. But you know what? The VA won't let us actually get in to get diagnoses and treatment and stuff. They keep ping-ponging him around. So anyways, like all this military stuff and VA stuff is new to me. I'm learning about this now. and I have been this past month, or this past year. But anyways, we're still dating. This is new for me. This is the first time I've actually we're more than dating now, but it's the first new relationship I've had in over 20 something years, anyways, so in the beginning, I didn't want to step on toes too much and step in and be like, hey, can you tell me what's going on? Blah, 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 blah. I slowly began to see his situation unravel and to put the overall story together from what he would tell me, because whenever he tell me about stuff, obviously he's very upset about it. And so in the beginning, I was like, okay, well, I'm not sure how much of this is true or if he's just in a heightened state and exaggerating, because with PTSD, you can perceive things that aren't there, and after a while, I was like, okay, yeah, like this is definitely, this was definitely fucked up. Like, this was messed up. Anyways, long story short, he tries to keep himself busy to keep himself out of trouble. Otherwise, his mind will go to all kind of crazy places. So he enrolled in welding school at Tulsa in Jacksonville, and he was doing okay for the first month, and then he started to have second thoughts about being in school and stuff. He would call me before class, like freaking out, like not wanting to go to class. And really the stress started to come on, like when he started to fall behind a little bit and he couldn't get the help that he needed. Well, we talked to some instructors at one point, but I ended up, calling and requesting help from the school's veterans service officer. And that service officer, it took me multiple weeks to get them to actually respond. Finally, a month later, they go and check on Alex, who is now already spiraled. And then things got worse. At one point I'm driving back to Florida at this point, because that's where he was at. I was in Florida, trying to help him, because I understand that when you have PTSD or something similar and all that anxiety and stuff, that you get overwhelmed, that you can't always speak for yourself, that you need an advocate. Anyways, I go down there, basically have a fucking board meeting. Like, I walk into the school and talk to like campus vice president and some other people. And, they assure us once again that they will help Alex, that the teachers will check on him, that they'll, help, evaluate whether he can, they did give him like a little extension period, or they reset one of his sessions. But when he went back, they moved into a different shift. They told him there were going to be fewer students on it. There were more students, and he still did not have access to the instructors and stuff. And eventually it got so bad. I'm having mental crisis now from the stress of just trying to get them to help him. And like, Alex didn't want to leave because he didn't want to fuck up his GI Bill or whatever. It's like caught between a rock and a hard place or whatever. The school's not they were 100% taking advantage of him. You're catering to veterans. You have a veteran service officer that doesn't respond until a month later, and then only checks in once and doesn't take the time to actually, they obviously don't know anything about PTSD. You've got to help people feel comfortable with you, or they're not going to come back to you and ask you about anything. Anyways, once again, long story short, I encouraged Alex to make the decision to just leave the school for both of our sake, and to just, and at that point, his apartment complex, which was like almost $2,000 a month, he needed to go month to month to be able to finish school, but he couldn't. They wanted to charge him $3,000 a month. Well, he only gets like $750 from his disability. Like, obviously he can't afford that. His savings is quickly running out. He lived in an Airbnb for about a month while we were trying to figure out what to do with his school situation, before deciding that he would just come stay with me and Carl until we can get things back on his feet. Anyway, so I've been back and forth with him to the VA several times, ping-ponged around. Every time he has appointments, they get canceled. And then recently I was told, basically you're just not going to get an appointment unless you show up in person, demand to be seen that day, and then it's still luck of the draw. Every time we've seen someone or called the crisis line, they're like, is he about to kill someone or himself? And if that's not the case, then it's not an emergency. But it is an emergency. It's not just an emergency when someone's on the brink of killing someone or something. Is this destroying our lives right now? The VA is responsible for destroying his life. Where's justice for veterans and for their families?